As now practicing the Dhamma of Satipatthana is for developing the powers which can keep our lives from becoming destroyed. Our lives can become destroyed by doing and saying and planning, thinking the wrong things. And when we have powers the powers that are able to restrain and control and govern our life, then we can prevent this from happening. And in developing these powers, one doesn't need any special instrument. One simply needs to develop the powers that one has. And on a very basic level, one has to have confidence in cause and effect. One has to trust that when one does something good, either does something or says something or plans something that is good, that is clean, that is civilized, these types of actions, speech, and thoughts bring pure, clean results. One first of all has to have confidence in this, and also that things that we do which are bad, saying bad things, planning bad things, because the intention is low and base, these things bring bad results. So one needs to have confidence in this, similar to understanding that when we avoid eating food that is not suitable for us, we don't get the problems that come from eating what's not good for us. So in the same way, this is how we can understand unsuitable bad actions. So this is something that we should have confidence in the start, in a very basic way. And without this faith and confidence, it's very important to have this at the outset, because without it, one won't want to make the effort to do the work. So when we learn about how to develop these powers in our life, how to restrain ourselves and so on, learning about this has the nature of waking up our faith. When we learn about the practice, we have faith that becomes awoken, but it's not strong yet, because following on the faith that comes from hearing, one needs to follow it by practice. And if one doesn't actually practice and then develop knowledge stage by stage, our faith won't yet be strong. It will just be wakened. But it won't be the type of faith that comes from acceptance through seeing for oneself, through one's own personal knowledge. So if one practices according to the instructions, and the mind becomes pure and clean, and one develops knowledge stage by stage in a special way, because one develops one's personal knowledge, one's faith becomes decisive. One's faith is, one comes to acceptance because one sees for oneself through one's practice. And as one continues to develop knowledge, the faith also continues to arise correspondingly. And finally, if one encounters true peace, then one's faith will become unshakable. No one will be able to break one's faith. So this type of faith that comes through experiencing true peace will last not only throughout this lifetime, but through any future lifetimes that come. With this, one knows the right path from the wrong path, and therefore one chooses the right path. One continues to walk the right path, and this ability to walk the right path becomes very strong. So when one comes to realize true peace through one's practice, then one has gained the benefit of having been born a human at this time. One has walked the path of practice and reached the safe destination. And this is what Sayadaw wants for the yogis. And therefore, he wants the yogis to know the correct path and to walk it with faith. He's giving the Dhamma gift, and he's very, very happy when he sees that yogis can accept it. So today, because of this, Sayadaw has started out today by giving these words of urging to the yogis. The power of the Dhamma, which elevates our status in life, reaches to the highest point. This is the extent to which the Dhamma can go. It has this power. And if one has practiced, those who practice respectfully, with meticulous care, and with continuity, if they have started to experience the Dhamma, then piti, joy, starts to develop. And as they continue, the noting becomes better, the observation becomes better, and it becomes even stronger, the joy. And especially when one sees how mind and matter, which are related as cause and effect, arise and pass away in a fleeting manner, in a very fast manner. They're here one moment and then gone the next. They appear and then disappear very rapidly. When one sees this, the mind, the clean mind, the pure mind becomes continuous. And one's knowledge, one's awareness is swift. One's knowledge is swift. The mind knows the mind and matter which are arising and passing away very quickly. And at that time, a happiness arises that never becomes old. One never becomes bored with it. It is an unrelinquishable happiness. And at that stage, the yogi won't back off from the practice. The yogi has, at that point, mental and physical stamina. And the yogi feels very happy with the practice. So then, the faith that is informed faith that comes through knowledge, is very keen. One's faith is very distinct, and one won't back off at all. And so too, one's effort or virya, it only progresses. It doesn't back off. It doesn't reduce. And one has the courage to avoid wrongdoing. Following on effort, sati becomes especially good. Samadhi and panya also, concentration and wisdom. At this stage, then these keen and sharp powers, which are able to govern our life, which are able to rule our life in a very positive way, they become quite strong. And At this stage also the defilements of insight arise. And what the yogi experiences at this stage in the practice just pulls the yogi along. The meditation teacher does not need to urge the yogi to practice at this stage. What the yogis experience themselves pulls them along. And it is said in the text that due to 9 causes, the ruling powers, which weren't there to begin with, which weren't there before one started the practice, due to 9 causes, these powers become very keen. And the first of these 9 causes for the ruling faculties, the ruling powers to become strong, are, before one experiences it in the practice, one must understand from a theoretical level that everything arises and then passes away. Whatever arises passes away. And one has to just understand this on a theoretical level, whether it's because someone has said it or because one has read it. One shouldn't try to reject this idea. One shouldn't try to find something that is permanent. One shouldn't entertain doubts about, is it really true that everything that arises passes away? One should accept this. And it says that this happens, that swift knowledge arises at the stage when the mental powers become developed. So if one wants to develop this type of swift knowledge, then a person has to trust at a basic level that things which arise moment by moment due to conditions pass away. And that is said in Pali, upanupananam sankharanam kayameva pasati. One needs to see the dissolution of the mind and matter which arises moment by moment due to causes. And so the teachers must need to speak about it so that the yogis will know from a theoretical standpoint. They talk about the objects to be observed. And it's not that the yogis have seen this in their practice yet, but they need to know about it from a theoretical standpoint. So the teachers need to mention about true nature, the true nature of the objects and the common characteristics. And in previous days, Sayadaw has been speaking about how we experience phenomena at the 6 sense doors. And most recently, Sayadaw has been speaking about how objects arise and are perceived at the body, what is called the body door, how we experience objects of touch. This is what Sayadaw has been speaking about. For the starting yogi, or for the yogi who has practiced before, but does so in a superficial way, because their observations, their moments of observation are sparse, that is, few and far between, they aren't even able to develop purity of mind yet. And some yogis don't take care with their precepts, so they don't have the purity of conduct, which is the basis for purity of mind to arise. So when the yogi practices, they observe the rising and the falling in the sitting. And when they are able to note so that the mind stays with the object, then the yogi gains purity of mind. And when they do this a lot, when they gain purity of mind, when they've gained it and they can maintain it for quite a while, then one comes to see mind and matter. One comes to see the difference between these two. And continuing to observe for longer, one comes to see how mind and matter are related as cause and effect. And continuing to practice, one comes to see how this mind and matter, which is related as cause and effect, arises and then passes away. This is the start of Vipassana knowledge. It is not yet very strong. And when one can overcome difficult feelings, Vedana, by observing them, when one is able to do this because one's practice is good, then if one sees how mind and matter arise and pass away very quickly, the yogi will not back off anymore. The yogi won't, because at this point the yogi has come to experience the taste of the Dhamma. So when one reaches this stage, one won't back off. So what Sayadaw has been saying is that in this, mind and matter occur due to causes, and we have to observe them when they arise. When we observe, one comes to see them go away. What we observe is, it's like there's these large field of observation. There's a large field of observation, and within this there are things, small things that arise, that pass, that come, and we need to observe them because they become apparent. So this is the things that we observe, the true nature that we observe, or the sabhava lakkhana. It arises and passes away. And the fact that it arises and passes away is a characteristic that mind and matter have in common. All types of true nature, all types of individual characteristics, the characteristics of phenomena that are unique to certain types of, unique to each type of thing, mind and matter, all these individual characteristics arise and then pass away. And this is their common characteristic. So mind and matter have this nature to arise and pass away. So this is here. What now we hear about it. This is called theoretical knowledge, or sutta-maya jnana, and we have to accept this theory. We shouldn't try to search for something permanent when we observe. We shouldn't try to resist the idea that all things which arise pass away when we are only at the stage of hearing about it, that is the stage of sutta-maya jnana. So as Sayadaw has been explaining, this is the object. This is how to observe. When one observes, it arises. One comes to see that it arises and passes away. So one should trust in this. So this is just the stage of telling people that this is what really happens. And if one wants to experience it for oneself, then one has to develop strong faith. And in doing this, in developing the powers to be able to see the Dhamma for oneself, one can't work carelessly. One has to work respectfully, And one also cannot take any breaks. One has to work continuously without a break. And so, of these 2 points, Sayadaw will begin to speak about these, which are also causes for the powers to arise. It is said, tata cha sakacha kiryaya sampadeti. This is to continue, to continue to speak about the causes which bring the ruling faculties to come into existence. In sharpening the ruling powers, it is said Vipassana knowledge is developed with respectful practice. Sakacha kiryaya sampadeti. That means that in order to develop Vipassana knowledge, this is the way to do it, with respectful practice. So that means that, first of all, one needs to listen to the method, the instructions respectfully. And then, as according to what one has heard and understood, one should put them into practice carefully. So one of the first things is that although one is strong, perfectly healthy, one has to behave as though one is an invalid, as though one is weak and sick. When people are healthy, they move about quickly. They get up, stand up, sit down quickly. But a person who has a bad back, for example, will stand up slowly, will sit down slowly, will move their arms and legs slowly so that they don't hurt themselves. So, although a yogi is strong, the mind and matter that occur in us are very fast and very subtle. And if we do our actions, if we perform actions quickly, we can't keep up with them. We can't observe what happens in us. So in order to be able to observe the true nature that is in us, that arises in us, the sabhava lakkhana, and in order to be able to catch its common characteristic, that is, that it arises and then passes away, one has to observe effectively. One has to work respectfully. So the yogis should ask themselves, in standing up, sitting down, in doing actions, how do I do them? Do I do them quickly or slowly? And when one is doing things that involve other people, like going to lunch in a line, getting food at the buffet, other people are in front of us, other people are in back of us. So at those times, and also taking a shower or a bath, we have to move quickly. When other people are affected, we can't move, we can't note every detail. And when we're bathing also, we have to just note in a very general way at that time. We can't be very detailed and slow because other people are involved. But when we do the sitting, when we go from sitting to walking, when we do the walking, when we do the general activities that only involve ourselves, then as much as possible we should behave as though we are a sick person. And only if this is the instruction, and only when one does exactly according to the instructions will one be able to gain the beneficial results of practice. It is said, balawa dubalo riwa. Although one is healthy, one shouldn't do any sudden movements. One shouldn't stand up quickly, sit down quickly, walk, and so on. One shouldn't make sudden movements intentionally. And that's not all. It is said, Chakumasa yata ando. That means that although one has eyes to see, one should behave as though one is blind. That means that when an interesting sight comes into view, one shouldn't just look at it. One shouldn't look here and there, look around at the environment and see what might be nice. One should restrain one's eyes as though they weren't functional at all. One should just have that attitude. And regarding sound too, it is said, Sotawa badiroyata, that although one hears a sound, that one wants to know what is that sound, and so on, one has to just not take any interest in it at all. One simply needs to act as though one hadn't heard it at all, because one needs to observe hearing, not to follow the sound and find out anything about it. So when someone is deaf, they don't hear a sound at all. And so no matter what sound is going on around them, they aren't interested in it. And yogis too should have the idea of not taking any interest in the sounds or sights that go around them. There's no need to, make ourselves blind or make ourselves deaf. It's simply that we should have that attitude. There's no need to be blind or deaf in order to do the practice. One should just not take interest in sights, not take interest in sounds. It is also said, Penyawa sayatamugo. That means that no matter how much education one has, no matter how much skill one has, or experience in life, one should have the attitude that I know nothing. One should simply have the attitude of think of oneself as a complete beginner who knows absolutely nothing, and just tell yourself, I'm going to follow what the teacher says, and then just do it. Just do what the teacher says. So have that. It's not that one doesn't have knowledge, but one puts it aside and don't try to use that skill while you do the practice. And further, when one reaches the stage where uncomfortable feelings arise, the stage of Vedana arising, it can happen that one sits for just 5 minutes and very uncomfortable feelings come up. So at this stage, one who has concern for their life and limb may move because one's afraid of the pain. But if one moves at this stage, if one shifts at this stage instead of just being patient and observing the pain, then one won't be able to get past this stage in the practice. So one has to not have any regard for life and limb when one is experiencing pain. One has to think of oneself just as if one were a corpse. A corpse doesn't react if it's poked here and there, and one should just have the same attitude towards one's body when it's experiencing pain. And this is what the texts say, and it is said that this is how one who wants to become a true human being, one who wants to make their mental attitude humane, to have a humane heart, and to develop special human knowledge, this is how one needs to practice. This is said in the texts. And if those who want to gain special knowledge practice in this way that has just been described, within a few days, faith will become very strong. It will develop and blossom. no matter what work we do, when we know a method that is supposed to get good results, when we know how to get good results, then if we do that, if we apply that method respectfully, we are sure to get the good results that come from the method. So if one does not know the method for gaining benefit, one won't be able to get the results. If one knows the method but doesn't follow it, doesn't apply it, then also one won't get the results. If one knows the method, applies it, but doesn't do it with respect for the method, then also one's results won't be good. So only if one knows the method and then puts it into practice with care and respect for the practice will one get the benefits, and one will be like a good worker. One will be a good worker. So Sayadaw today wants to urge the yogis to be good workers and to follow the instructions of the meditation teachers. That's all for today. Sadhu, sadhu.